Merhabalar, bir ne yiyorsak o yüzde daha beraberiz. Çok hareketli zamanlar geçiyor İstanbul, kaydını tutmaya çalışıyoruz. Olmayan Türkiye'nin bütün yoğunluğunun içerisinde, gündemin içerisinde alttan alta farklı bir geleceği, beraber bir geleceği, bütün bir geleceği, rüyalarımızı birleştirebildiğimiz, hayallerimizi, yarınımızı bir tutabildiğimiz bir geleceği de inşa etmeye çalışıyoruz. Onun kaydını ihmal etmemek adına bugün çok şanslı bir tesadüf oldu ve Allan Savory Enstitusu'nun kurucusu Allan Savory bizimle beraber ve Anadolu Meralari'nın kurucularından biri Durukan Dudu bizimle beraber ve holistic approach dedikleri bütüncül yaklaşıma ilişkin, yani doğayla insanın ilişkisine, oradan yaşamaya, oradan yaşam bulmayı, kendi bekasını, insanoğlunun kendi bekasını sağlarken bu bekanın aynı zamanda doğanın bekası anlamına gelmesi için neler yapacağımıza dair konuşmak üzere bir aradayız. Konuşmamız İngilizce gidecek. Ben girişi Türkçe yaptım. Dostumuzun hatırına Durukan'la da özellikle İngilizce gidiyor olacağım. Arzu ediyorum ki tercümeyi aşağıdan takip etme şansınız olsun. Eksiği gediği olmasın. Hemen başından söyleyeyim ama bu konuşma sürecinde atladığımız, kaçırdığımız pek çok detay olabilir. Pek çok konu olabilir. Ama Durukan'la teması kaçırmayacak olursanız, yani Anadolu Meralari'yla, tahmin ediyorum önümüzdeki dönemlerde bu bütüncül yaklaşıma ilişkin sadece kırsalda değil, inanıyorum ki kentlerde de, kentlerdeki ilişkilerimizde de, topluluk oluşturmakta da yararlanacağımız çok detaylı olacak. Welcome to Istanbul, Allan. Sorry for this long Turkish introduction. This is amazing, actually, this holistic approach being spoken here in this very big city, a metropole, a megapole. I don't know how to define it. It's huge and it's getting bigger. And there is a new generation of people, like Durukan himself, who are trying to mend these broken bridges of these huge cities have created between the man and the nature. And you have been talking about your approach, you have been given examples and showing ways. I would like to hear today your vision for our future, if we follow your path or else. Both sides, please.
Well, thank you. When you ask about a vision for the future, mine is to, and I won't see it in my lifetime, I know, but mine is to see us united as human beings. We are humans. We're not all the different religions and tribes and colours. In the end of the day, we're humans. And I would just dearly, and I've spent my life trying to work towards this, like to see us united and living in harmony with one another and our environment. At the moment, we're in chaos, really, and conflict with ourselves and our environment. So that is my dream now. I believe that's now possible, and not through any great wisdom on my part. I'm just an ordinary person who's been obsessed with trying to find solutions for my life. To do that, we have to live in harmony with the environment and ourselves, as I say, and taking a holistic approach, as I heard you mention, will not do it. We would be arrogant if we believed we were the first humans to see our connection with the environment and to try to live in harmony with it. Humans, I believe, have done that for centuries, but it wasn't working. Everywhere we were damaging the environment, if we look at it, whether it was oceans or forests or whatever. And through studying the desertification problem and trying to solve that most ancient of our problems leading to the failure of civilizations, almost by accident, I hit on the tip of a bigger iceberg and discovered a way to actually make decisions holistically. So we can think holistically, we can take a holistic approach, but at the end of the day, how you make every decision to buy this glass, come to this meeting, buy this, whatever, that's where the rubber hits the road, to use that cliche. And what we discovered through trying to solve the desertification problem was that it could not be solved without using livestock, but then we had to learn how to manage that livestock, because livestock throughout history has caused the great deserts, and livestock, as we're running them today in factory industrial feedlots, should be a crime. It is so damaging to human health, environment, economy, that we shouldn't be allowing it to happen. We need those animals back on the land properly managed. But when we discovered how to manage them properly in the 1960s, we discovered how to do that through the process that Durukan is learning about and teaching people. We were still getting erratic results. And then we realized they weren't coming from the way we managed the livestock, they were coming from social, cultural issues we hadn't considered, economic issues we hadn't considered, and at that point I realized land is not manageable. And we have tried to manage land for centuries. Land is so tied to the culture of the people that they're inseparable. Just like the hydrogen and the oxygen in this water are inseparable. You cannot separate the culture of people from the land. And then economy is totally tied to that, because the only economy that will sustain any community, any nation, ultimately comes from sunlight through green growing plants on regenerating soils, regenerating oceans, not what we've got today. So we have to manage economy, land, environment, and culture together. And we discovered a very profoundly simple way of doing that. Now that has made it possible for us to actually use the word manage, because we have to manage our lives, our environment, to actually manage holistically. And unless we manage holistically, the future for humanity, I sincerely believe, will be It's the horrors that are coming through, let's call it climate change, biodiversity loss, desertification, climate change, they're the same issue. Without biodiversity loss, desertification doesn't occur. It's not even a problem. It's a symptom of biodiversity loss. And without solving the desertification issue and addressing it, you cannot address climate change, even if we stop using fossil fuels totally. There's just such a lack of realism in the world with all our compartmentalized education and experts in narrow areas, and nobody putting it all together and seeing that big picture. But ultimately, we're going to have to manage all of that together at a policy level from governments, international agencies, in development projects, and on the farms and ranches and pastoralists as we're doing.
So the whole education system also needs to be rethought. I mean, because by education we are we are placed in compartments. I mean, some become engineers, some become doctors, but they all need to be talking to each other. Universities don't have that kind of holistic approach now.
Yes, that's very much so. And John Ralston Saul studied that much more than I did. He wrote the book Voltaire's Bastards, how we'd had major blunders in the world. And in Voltaire's time, they realized or thought that that was due to amateurism, because you could buy or inherit your position in a company, the army, whatever. And so with amateurs leading our institutions, it was leading to tremendous blunders in the world. So in Voltaire's time, they brought in the age of enlightenment, reason. We were no longer going to have that. We were going to have highly trained experts running organizations, and you have that today, CEOs of big companies, etc. And Napoleon spread that throughout Europe more than any other leader. Now what Saul studied, and his book should be read by everyone, I believe, was what happened. Did it become better or worse? And he found it got worse. Under expert, highly trained leadership, it became worse in our companies, our institutions, etc. And he explains that as due to our very siloed, compartmentalized educational system and so on, where even they have their own jargon in each profession, not to communicate better, but to protect them from other professions and criticism. And he lays that out very, very clearly indeed. So if you take an issue like we just mentioned just now, biodiversity loss, you have separate educational departments, you have separate organizations, NGOs, dealing with biodiversity. desertification, you have the same thing, range science and so on. Climate change, you have the same thing. For us to have one conference in the world where we discuss this issue seriously as one issue, which it is, would be impossible today. We can't do it because we're so compartmentalized, and that is that is our Achilles heel. Yeah.
Indeed.
Now, what we've accidentally discovered in the work we were doing on desertification is a very simple way of pulling that together.
So can we see the farm as a college, as an educational area?
You mean the one?
Yes, as the farm. The farm. Actually, I should ask this question to you. I mean, the way you met Allan and his the way you realized his approach could be feasible, manageable, or doable, whichever word you'd like to use. Do you see the farm as an educational area for you, like a school?
Well, definitely. Definitely. You know, I've been in an ecological community, let's say, in Turkey for now almost 10 years. And as everybody in that community working on climate change or biodiversity loss, or actually like all the political issues we have, including the environmental ones, I was in deep despair. Let's say, I was completely desperate. As everybody who works, let's say, climate change and who knows the figures, I was just, you know, okay, the world is going to end and nothing to do about that. Because even if, as Allan says, I mean, even if you shut up all the, I don't know, like factories and the airplanes and everything, the carbon dioxide is going to be staying there and it's going to ruin the world and everything, and you see that's actually keep increasing. So I was educated pessimist, let's say. And I was looking for ways out of this.
Well,
kind of.
what a combination. We all are right now.
Yeah.
Very well educated, and we are all very pessimist.
Yeah.
We don't have much of a faith in humanity.
And I didn't
we don't
have
see
any.
much of a future. Okay, what has changed?
Well, then I met, actually I heard of holistic management when I was in Sweden studying, making my master's on rural development. And the farm where I was staying, which now became the Swedish hub of Savory Institute, just had their holistic management training when I get there. So it was a very good timing. So I was, you know, talking with them, and the way Allan's framework, holistic management framework, was designed appealed me quite like rapidly, because it was holistic. It was kind of taking consideration, you know, a lot of things. And then I was a guy until recently who didn't know anything about soil. I was not even able to separate a goat or a sheep until like a year ago. But then I knew the theoretical part, and then I realized that it's very possible, and it's actually being done at the moment, that you can take this carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, which is too much, which is causing the problem, and put it back on the soil as fertility through properly managing animals, livestock, which would then create the food and the fiber that we all need as humanity. That was for me a very huge enlightenment that changed my pessimism into enlightenment and optimism. Also together with this approach that we have in Turkey about making young people in urbans and in rural forward to rural. We don't say back to rural, we say forward to rural. So I was kind of amazed with all that we've seen, you know, all those things, and I'm still very much amazed about how many things that should be done today and that can be done through holistic management and that are so fun to do, are so together, you know. I think we are the luckiest generation ever in the world because we have things to do, we have ways to do them, and they are so fun to do them.
Well, you're telling me that being a superhero is a lot of fun, and because what you're describing is being a superhero. This is one of the darkest of the ages. This feels like the end of the age of men. Mm-hmm. Definitely not the end of the planet, but the end of our age. And you are having truly an amazing time repairing it, wow. Being a superhero. How does that feel?
Well, I don't think that I'm a superhero.
No, I'm not kidding. Please, no. Let's make sure that we all understand.
Mm-hmm.
If someone's to save this whole thing that has gone very, very wrong, if someone's to put it in the right direction, we are to call them superheroes, for sure. And we are to thank them forever. And I would very much love to see this generation and the next generation, this is my vision perhaps for future, although I asked you, I'd like to see it filled with superheroes. So tell us a little more about being a superhero so that perhaps we can intrigue some new ones.
Okay, I'll try to
into the game. Go ahead, please tell us.
Well, the only thing which really matters and which really perhaps means to be a superhero with your words will be to have dedication, to have 100% dedication, to have real and complete trust. So when we started our journey several years ago, we were on the journey, but we didn't know what to do exactly, especially how to repair the world, how to repair the ecosystems. And then we heard of a guy called Allan Savory, and he was saying some stuff. And we were like reading about it, and quite some people also criticizing him, you know, everything. But then somehow, after some readings and after some actually also meeting him, of course, we just decided that we trust the path that he's gone and all the holistic managers. And then we kind of surrendered ourselves and our lives to the cause that he just started. So, I mean, knowing Allan's life story, I could only dare to have 1/10 of his life experience in my last breath, because he has gone through a lot of things. And that makes me just say that we all have to just care, as Allan was saying actually 2 days ago. That's all it takes. You care, you trust your friends, and you get on the journey, and you just walk, and you just trust on something. And for us, that was holistic management.
Tell me how this school works for you. I mean, the farm. It should be quite a lot of work. I mean, you're telling me it's a lot of fun, but it should be a lot of work at the same time. Being a superhero cannot be an easy thing.
No, well...
Tell me a day's life. How does that work for you?
Yeah. So I told you that I couldn't even, distinct sheep and a goat until like a year ago. And that's when we got our livestock, actually.
How many? And what?
We have 18 sheep and 1 ram. That's what our financial planning through holistic management and our holistic context and our land planning and all the land size and everything is allowing us at the moment.
What's the land size?
That will be 4 hectares at the moment, and that's the first implementation pilot area of our hub, Anadolu Meralari, and that's situated in Biga, Çanakkale. So we are actually, it's a learning site, so we are learning as well. And
it's a school.
Yeah, it's a school for ourselves.
It's a school for superheroes.
Well, we are just saying we are the first students.
Lovely.
And we are like kind of encouraging others to become, other trainees, students as well. And it works so good. I mean, yes, we have been trained about holistic management. We have read about Allan's work and everything, but it wasn't until we put our hands on the soil, but with the help of really, within the context, within the framework of the holistic context, then you realize what this is about. I have to admit that the first time I heard about holistic management being a decision-making framework, I was like, that's okay. We have many of them in the world. Everybody claims that they have the perfect, decision-making process and everything. And I was like, but I'm already a good decision maker in my life. So I don't really need that, but okay, I will have a look. And I had a look, I liked it really, and I was like, oh, that's good, we can use that. And then when you trust the methodology and when you start to implement that, I guarantee you, as a person that used to take very good decisions, I now see that very good decisions are not enough. If you want to swim against the stream, which we are trying to do today, right, in this mainstream world, you have to know, you have to take very good decisions, and take them in a holistic context, in your holistic context. That's what Allan taught us. You have to keep in mind and you have to refer all the time about what you want. And your decisions should refer to that, not to your like desires or to your needs at that point, but to that. And then it's a huge difference. So it's not only like some theoretical, rhetorical, it's about life itself, and it works. And I can give you, if we will have enough time, I could give you in that learning site, for instance, thousands of very concrete examples about how it works and how it actually perfectly works, not only ecologically, but economically and socially as well.
That part I actually want to ask Allan. Allan, you're not only talking about nature, you're also talking about the relations between beings.
Yeah.
So you're also talking about building a community, but this community is not only for the humankind, it's not only friends, it's also... Can you please talk a little on that part as well? Building a community, what kind of a community?
Well, earlier I said you can't manage land. If I say manage land, it's like saying manage the oxygen in that water. It doesn't make sense. All right, so all we can manage in our lives is our lives, our community, our culture, tied to our life-supporting environment. So everything we do, every human action, except an unconscious one, if your hand touches the hot stove, you pull it away. You don't make a decision. If a mother's baby falls into the water, she jumps in. She doesn't make a decision, she just does it. Now, every single conscious decision that every human has made for the last 2 million years was made towards an objective. You cannot make a conscious decision without an objective. And the trouble lay there. An objective needs a context. So if I say to you, I'm going to light a fire, you have no idea whether I should. I have an objective, light a fire. You don't know whether I should or not without asking me the reason, the circumstances. And if I'm just lighting it here, I could burn the building down. So once you know the reason, and it's a cold night and there's a fireplace, that's all right. So any objective in our lives without an adequate context leads to unintended consequences. And that's what's been happening to humans since we discovered fire and could manipulate our environment. So all we've done is discovered that we need a holistic context. Now that's a new concept. It's not in any philosophy in the world, not in any branch of science in the world, not in any religion in the world. So it was a new concept, and it was very difficult to work out what it was. But it's you and I in a family or a community stating how we want our lives to be based on our cultural, spiritual, religious values, all of them, and tying that to our life-supporting environment, be it the farm or the whole of Turkey or whatever it is, whatever level we're working at, in such a state that it will have to be in 500 years from now for our descendants to be living that life. Now we have a context. Now if you look at every action of your government in Turkey, or every human here, I can tell you what the context is. 99% of the time we're doing something, taking action, because we need it, or we desire it, or for profit. That is too simplistic.
And it's only for today.
It's too simplistic because you cannot manage without it having social, cultural implications, environmental and economic. So it's like me lighting a fire with no context. Now, your government, like every government in the world, its main role is forming policies, laws and regulations. That's what governments do. Now, every government in the world, if you look at every policy they have, whether it's dealing with drugs or terrorism or noxious plants or droughts or floods, you look at the objectives of the policy and nobody ever asks what is the context. You don't even ask that because it is so obvious. You don't want to appear stupid. And the context is always the problem. We've got these objectives in a drug policy because our children are taking too many drugs. Or we've got these objectives to kill weeds because there are too many. Do you see? Always the problem. That is too simple for the circumstances, the real life circumstances. That's why in the humanities and some other sciences we've developed the saying, the law of unintended consequences, because it is so common. So if we just take a major example today, America has a drug policy. What is the context? Well, the kids were taking too many drugs. What are the consequences of those objectives in that policy because the context was inadequate? Drug use has increased. They now have more people in jail than Stalin had at the height of his reign. Violence has spread all over Mexico. It's spreading to other countries. It's spreading to North Africa now. These are the unintended consequences. And it doesn't matter what you take of a government policy, you'll find the same. So, again, I stress, accidentally, not through any wisdom, we discovered, oh my goodness, we need a holistic context. Not need, desire, profit, etc. You have the objectives, you have the goals, the missions, the visions of today. But at the end of the day, they all come about through actions. And those actions need an adequate context in management. So if you look at everything we are making today, everything in this room was made possible with expertise and technology. There isn't a single thing in this room that wasn't made possible by fire. We could only advance our technology after we had fire. All right? Now, think of everything we make. It's successful. We make a bridge, we make big buildings, we build a city. It's successful. We can put a man on the moon. Now, think of everything we manage. Global finance, global economy, droughts, floods, agriculture, religious strife, all of the things we manage, we're running into increasing problems. It's because a simple context is all right in something you make, which is complicated. It's not complex, but everything we manage is complex. Self-renewing organizations, nature, etc. This is complexity, and the simple context is what leads to the problem. So we didn't know that for thousands of years.
Or we did not want to see it. Perhaps the problem was already there in other areas. But aren't we growing as communities at the moment? Don't we need smaller communities to be able to come up with quite clear problems with solutions?
Yeah,
so that everything is visible, nothing is in the
well,
dark?
So that'll come about from management and policies. So when you say, don't we need smaller communities? Well, I don't know, because I don't have the context. Now, if you give me the context of that country or whatever, then people will work out whether that's in their own enlightened self-interest or not. So if I could take an example, because this is practical. Recently in my own country, I had an opportunity to put 35 members of parliament through a workshop on policies, developing policies holistically. Now, I started by reminding them of a statement by the president in the 1980s where he said, we do not have a bigger problem than our rising population and our deteriorating environment. But he said, we politicians do not know what to do. And I believe that's true worldwide. He said, we can only take the advice of our professional advisors, but when it goes wrong, we politicians get the blame. Now, that's a terribly shrewd statement. I reminded them of that, and I said, now I have 35 of you lawmakers in this workshop without your professional advisors who are trained in narrow fields, so let us look at the most difficult situation we have in the country, land and agriculture. And let's look at that. And first, these 35 members of parliament were from two divided parties that are not just at loggerheads, they're killing each other. I mean, it's really violent. And the moment we defined a national, holistic context, how does everybody in the country want their life to be? You'll find everybody wants more prosperity, more stable families, more physical security, more freedom to pursue their own spiritual, religious values, etc. And we tied that to the state that the land would have to be like 500 years from now. Once we did that, it was amazing. Everything just soared above politics, above special interest groups or anything. Then we started to work out a policy in that context, and by the end of the workshop, we had the policy the world would dream of. It would be the first country in the world, if it was implemented, producing more food than dead, eroding soil. We would have millions more people wanting to go back on the land, balancing the city population with the rural. One of the interesting things came out of it, we would have no third-party endorsements like organic, sustainable, the reason being it'd be redundant. All food would be clean, healthy, nutritious, growing on regenerating soil. And the interesting thing was, throughout that workshop, we didn't use a single bit of knowledge that isn't already available in our universities, on our farms, on our ranches. The knowledge is there. It was a systemic problem. In other words, it was the way we were making decisions and actions that's causing the problem. We don't need masses more research, etc. Most of the knowledge we need is already available.
So this management thing is not only about managing, it's about negotiating, it's about bringing the information within hand's reach, it's about bringing the information onto the table so that everyone can negotiate the problems using the information and coming up with a totally different way of building it.
Yes,
the information and the relations on top of the problem.
That's a good way of expressing it. I'm using management as a generic word to cover all of that, because we manage our lives, we manage policies, everything. Yes, it's a tremendous unifier, because almost everybody in the world is wanting exactly the same thing. The first time I worked in my own country was after our long civil war had ended. We had been at war for years. We'd killed 30,000 people, another 20,000 were killed after the end of the war, so we had that very violent situation. 2 main tribes, and then a few of us white Zimbabweans. And the first time I ever worked on a policy with people back there, I said we needed a holistic context for the nation. I said we're limited on time. We can either define it ourselves now, or I have drafted one and I could read it and you can change it. So people said, we'll do that. I read it to them, and there was just stunned silence. Everybody was just totally silent for a long time. And then the first person to speak up, his actual words were, Christ, if we'd only known, we wouldn't have fought the war.
Oh, God.
We wouldn't have even fought the war. We didn't know that every human wanted the same things. Why are we killing each other? We never knew that.
That probably is why I asked for smaller communities, so that this information goes directly from one person to another. I mean, when we are too many, even the simplest idea of not wanting to go to war does not go through the proper channels. Yeah. It gets stuck. So let me ask the same question to Durukan, for he's got only 18 sheep on the land.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, most of our friends who will be watching this episode of yiyorsak, Oyuz will say, well, I have more than 100, I have 200, I have, this kind. As the size gets bigger, do you think the problems will get bigger? Or do you think even in the smallest or the largest, this can all be delivered?
Okay, so I will first start to say that to learn how to manage land, how to make it regenerative, it's very easy. And I know that, I can guarantee you that, because I have been through the process. I was telling you that a year ago, I didn't know how to separate this thing, a sheep and a goat. And then we got our small herd, and that was actually what other holistic managers around the world was telling me. Don't worry about the land, don't worry about the livestock, it will be okay. And then I realized that it's really okay, because nature, all those animals, all those plants, they know what to do much, much better than I could ever imagine to know. But, so it's very easy. Now we are producing, now our sheep are much more like fat than any other in the village, who are always fed with grains. They're eating only grass on the land. We don't give them anything. And the soil is in much better condition only after 6 months. And we are spending 1/10 of our time, if you compare with other villagers spending their time. And I will guarantee you that if we would have bigger land and bigger animals, more animals, things will be much, much more easier. I can guarantee you that easily. Really easily. The hard thing is not to how to learn. I mean, that takes only around 15 days of training that we give to people. It's a quite technical training. It's, you know, a learning process. We are learning from the past experience, and we are using all the information that the biology science is providing us, like the latest, the most updated. That's what Savory Institute does. It's not hard. And then it just takes time to experience that, you know, to put a bit of sweat in the ground. The hard thing is to make people believe that it's all about really the way we make decisions. I was one of those arrogant people. And I guarantee you that like 95% of the people who are watching us now will say, oh yeah, that makes sense, but I'm already a good decision maker. And you are not. We are not. Because it's so hard to accept that we are not taking decisions in a context, in a healthy way. You would be very easy to say, you know, I don't really understand from, I know, math. I don't really know math. That's very easy to tell you. It doesn't hurt your, you know, ego or your peace with yourself. But it's very hard to say, well, I don't make good decisions. I don't make good decisions in a context. That's why people always try to get into, okay, I got it, it's about decision, but how do I, you know, move the sheep? Do I put them here and there? No, there is no answer. And there is like unlimited number of possibilities you can do on land. It depends on your context. And it's not a rhetorical thing. It's not abstract. It's very concrete. It defines you when you're going to put animals where, for what reason, when do you put them off. No, the financials, the social part, the grasslands in Turkey, you know, it's in the commons. So yes, it's very problematic. But at the same time, it can be the solution. So the holistic management, your holistic context, makes you do it a solution, not a problem. And it does, I guarantee you. You ask me what it takes to become a superhero. Well, I still think I'm not, but if there is only one thing, it's to accept, and that's what I mean by surrendering. Surrender yourself, forget about what you know, and just, you know, take the baby steps towards this holistic context, holistic management. That changes a lot. Was that your question, actually?
That was the question. Okay. That was the question.
And you talked about the size of the land. I can tell you from, because we've been doing this for 50 years, it's not new, it's only getting out to the public now, but when you get to managing land with livestock, if the decision making indicates livestock are needed, because some places it'll tell you not to use livestock, but where they are needed, then we use this planning process, and the larger the herds, the larger the land units, the easier it becomes.
No, I really did understand that this is just a way of thinking, seeing the nature and the humankind integrated with each other, and coming up with decisions for the benefit of all, rather than only one species.
Yeah.
Well, we've got a long way to go, that's how I feel, and we do truly need superheroes. Thank you for being with me today here in Istanbul. I hope that the community will get bigger and bigger, will become the whole planet eventually. This is where my hopes lie, this is where my daughter's future lies, and let's see how we do this together. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, but it's going to depend on young superheroes like this.
Indeed.
The young people are going to have to take over.
Indeed, I agree. Bu sefer bu kadar. Evet, gerçekten süper kahraman olup olmadığımızı bilmeksizin ama yanlış giden bir şeyi onarmak için ne yapabiliriz'e bakıp elini kolunu taşın altına sokanlardan olmak istiyorsanız Durukan Dudu'yla bir temasa geçin derim. Anadolu Meralari deyip bir küçük Google yaparsanız her iş için kullandığımız bilgisayarların başında, akıllı telefonların başında tahmin ediyorum çok da zor olmayacaktır. İlk 2 sayfa içerisinde karşılaşacağınıza eminim. Ulaşamadınız, bana ulaşın. Bana ulaşamadınız, Mece TV'ye ulaşın. Belki bu zinciri yakalamanın bir yolu olur. Bir sonraki sefere kadar. Hoşça kalın.